You ask me a question, but I don't have to really answer it, I just have to talk. And you cannot really stop me. Yeah, I come from photography and I switched to moving images because for a few reasons. Maybe one of the main reasons being that I thought that making films was more complex as a language, more possibilities, and so I had more research to do. And I think I was maybe also stuck in my already in my photography, in my images, in my aesthetic, and I needed to have like this other thing, which is sound, coming with it to suddenly to find another like field to run inside in a way.
Expected something better than before. We expected something more.
I started to make films with the band The National, but they were not big. They were small also at the time. And I was their first French fan in a way. You know, each time they would come to Paris, that would be like in the front row, me and my girlfriend would be like, yeah, you know. And you know, so we became friends like that, very simply. But nobody knew them at the time. You know, they were playing like very, very small venues. So when we started to make stuff, no, they were really a small band. The Takeaway Shows project was really started after I've made a few lo-fi music videos in a way for The National, for Clogs, which was this sort of like side band of The National, for a few other people, and I was like. It was a bit frustrating. I was like, nah, this is not the best way to represent music at all, you know. And I think that I always thought that music videos was like shadowing like much another exploration of relationship between images and sounds. And I was a big fan of music, but especially live music. I was living in Paris and I was lucky to be able to go to see so many shows, you know. And that was it, you know. I was like, oh, how can I like capture that with my approach to film in a way. And at the same moment, a friend of mine just came up with me and we had this idea of like making videos for his website, La Blogothèque. And so that's how we started.
Well, how did she get to the point of laughing like a child? My good friend, she's married and now so cool.
When we were doing the takeaway shows for La Blogothèque, it was like a little team of like me and my friend Cry, who was doing the website basically, you know, and it was sort of like hold the microphone and I would hold the camera and we just like go for an hour with those bands, and we made hundreds of them actually over like the course of like 3 years in Paris. I made like films there with like The National, Sigurdos, Yesaya, R.E.M., Tom Jones, Grizzly Bear, Beirut, I don't know, Dirty Projectors. Anyway, to name the most famous ones, but there was a lot of like less famous bands. But it was always in that realm of like indie rock music in a way. That's what we were listening to at the time. I was really interested in. But after 3 years of doing that project, I was like getting like towards other music, and I started to travel. So I left Paris, became a nomad.
Over you, relentless. Yes, it's true. My motor mouth, it runs over you. Over you.
I became nomadic by accident, and I think that I really believe in accidents and believing in signs of life. So I ended up being like homeless and traveling. Actually, I was like asked to travel, to come to a film festival or a music festival, to show my films. And because I had no need to go back home, because I had no home, I would just like stay, you know. Like, let's say a film festival would invite me in Chile for like 10 days, you know. And then they would be like, okay, so when do you want to go back? I'm like, just I'm gonna stay until something else happened, you know. And I was still really very much interested in like indie folk music, sort of. But little by little, again by accident, it was not like a very conscious decision. But I became more interested in traditional music actually. And not only traditional music, but I've been always interested in experimental music also. But I've been really much more interested in like how music is a key to understand the culture, and how music is a key to for community gatherings in general. You know, how people gather around music. So I've been starting to really question more those aspects. I spent 3 months in Indonesia, researching especially on spiritual aspects of music, sacred music, you know, ritualistic aspects, shamanic and stuff. And that's what I want to really research now, definitely much more. Even though I still make some takeaway shows for Blogothèque from time to time. When I'm filming like a young rock band in Jakarta, let's say, I would probably think that the best home for them is to be on that Blogothèque website. But the rest of my films go on my own website, which is that kind of like nomadic label, which is sort of like a very wide vision of what is music nowadays in the world. I think it's quite funny that we even think that making art, any kind of art, is a way to make a living, in sense of like making money. I think it's a very wrong idea. Actually, it's mostly through the 20th century that we, in the Western world, we developed this fact of like thinking that maybe artist is a job, you know, and that artists make money and get famous out of what they do. That's something I disagree with pretty much. And if you get really an interest in like what is creation in terms of like traditional form societies, for example, there is not at all this idea of like art being separated from society and being like a job in itself. You know, there is not artist actually. You know, here in Australia, if we can mention the Aboriginal culture, the idea of like there's not even musicians in Aboriginal cultures in general. It's just a way of being all together. So everybody participates in this. And I just feel like, you know, I think it's a good time to also like get over this kind of like those direction that those capitalistic directions, I guess, in a way that we took, and you know, everybody makes nowadays anyway. Everybody creates. So it's kind of funny to hear like musicians complaining that they sell less albums than 10 years ago. You know, it's like, okay, of course, but you know how many people make music nowadays compared to 10 years ago? Let's think about it like that. I think we're just like, it's a new form of society which is emerging and which is already there in a certain, depending how you see it, and that the idea of like making money out of this is just doesn't work with it. You know, I guess my approach to life is very holistic. If you understand that, holistic in the sense of like, you know, I'm not a specialist in anything, I'm just an amateur of everything. And all those like experiences, all those films actually, as film being a new experience in a way with new people, there's sort of like, there's those lines that starts to appear, you know, from a continent to another one, you know, from a traditional culture to a very modern one. And those things are amazing, because nobody can tell you really about that. There's, you know, nobody told you that. Then you're like, wow, yeah, okay, it makes sense. And that grows into something else, that beautiful, beautiful knowledge about life in general, I guess, you know? I don't know, I don't have any advice to give. I don't want to give any advice. It's the worst. I think you should be very careful about that, actually. You know, people should feel by themselves.